Well, Donald O'Connor is like the best of all time. It's the reason I took like tap lessons when I was a kid. I took tap for 12 years. The reason I always wanted to like walk on a wall. I never did that. I never accomplished that. So, but maybe one day.
This is a film that appears on your personal four faves, E.T.
I mean, who isn't influenced by E.T. in some way? You know, growing up was one of my first movies I ever saw. So I just remember being in awe and wonder of not just what America is, but of how nuanced the world can be as well.
I'm not afraid.
Thinking about Wicked, not just part one, but part two as one whole story, it was always about ascension, building a relationship between two beings that are from different planets, literally, but also, you know, the last scene of the actual ascension. I've never felt that way of leaving a movie, where the leaving was the most sort of grand part of it, where John Williams' score is hitting and those drums are hitting and the wind is blowing and everyone's just looking up in awe. Very few filmmakers get to have the climax at the end of their movie or have the pleasure of having Defying Gravity as that thing. Even though it's a giant scene, it's very intimate between two beings saying goodbye. And so I love that. Even there's a shot of a silhouette of E.T. as the sort of aperture is closing on him. And I always pictured Elphaba as being that person up there. Whether you get to be with her and see her feelings, or you get to be in awe of her presence and who she has become. Back to the Future, again, ascension. You know, where we're going, we don't need roads. So I love that was like always the trajectory. More specifically, Back to the Future, it was this idea of the town center that was always different, whatever space and time you were in. And when we were looking at where Dorothy's house would crash, hey, maybe Munchkinland is the center of all of this. Like, we're there, the house is falling. If you look back in movie one, the house is there. We just try to like hide it a little bit. And then later in the story, you see Munchkinland where they've already put up posters about the Wicked Witch, who was not the villain yet. And you get to see them putting up the posters. That tool of a place that we become very familiar with, but through different circumstances, things happen. And so we grow with that space.
You also brought up American high school movies.
Yes.
Such as She's All That, Legally Blonde,
Yep.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Mean Girls. I especially want to hear your thoughts about Mean Girls because I can see that in Ariana's performance, except she never goes full Regina George.
That's true. That was a very conscious choice because she isn't a mean girl. She has a lot of love to give. She's just naive. She's been living in a bubble her whole life. So we talked a lot about, like, she can't be mean. She's never mean. She's never cruel. Wicked has it built in. They have this sort of high school, like, / university sort of element to it. But I always thought, you know, coming into Shiz, when she comes in with her boat, it's like rolling in on the parking lot the first day of school, and you see all these students that are wide-eyed and ready to dream. And we have, of course, the two opposing sides of the outcast and the popular girl.
Oh my God, I love your skirt. Where did you get it?
It was my mom's in the 80s.
Vintage. So adorable.
Thanks.
That is the ugliest effing skirt I've ever seen.
It already plugs in very nicely. It already has nods to those kind of things. So I always love that. That has a very close part to, again, my American fairy tale growing up with movies. And it actually connects to even Pleasantville, which has a high school sort of element to it. We always said we're breaking the matte painting of the original Wizard of Oz. We're getting in there and not just looking at it, but we're actually feeling the dirt, feeling the scratches, seeing the wounds. And that was what was really important to have Ariana and Cynthia as those roles, because they could be more than just the cliche. But we got to play those cliches, which I love, but then sort of break them in the movie. And especially in Pleasantville, each one has to ask a real question for the first time. Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero in the forest, when she sort of calls him out and says, like, well, you're not really happy. And he sort of like takes a moment, and we give it the room, because to me it's like we're watching his brain break. It's not about, to me, it wasn't ever about like just romance between the two. It was about giving him a perspective of his life that he's always felt frustrated about, like, which is why sort of dancing through life is sort of this, well, you don't have to worry about anything, just dance through it all. You don't have to ask ever real questions. But her poking him, for us and for Johnny and Cynthia when we talk about this, was really like, this is the moment where his brain breaks and he asks the first question, like, what did you do back there and why didn't you do it to me? Because we took these characters seriously, because they were real formed characters that had deep roots of their wounds, he could play that out, and we see that in movie 2 play out even more.
Reading through Letterboxd reviews, they are very, very, very excited to see him in this next installment.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah. you submitted Smooth Criminal as an inspiration, and you can log that on Letterboxd.
Can I? Okay,
27 people have.
Okay, good. Michael Jackson is a part of the American story as well. Like in my mind, when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, his music videos, his short films, were the new musicals. For me, it was entering a space, sort of owning a crowd, and how does that develop when you're the thorn in the crowd, and then how do you win them over? How do you make a dance-off actually cool and not make it super cheesy? In the Ozdust, when they arrive, we took sort of nods from Smooth Criminal. We actually used the rhythm of Smooth Criminal when we were rehearsing it, just to get us into the vibe of like what it could sound like. And then the music team came in and replaced it all in rehearsals and said, hey, we get what your vibe you're going. We could take Dancing Through Life and make it like this and have a live band there. And we're like, oh yeah, the live band could be animals. It could be, it could be like Captain EO, where there was a fun element to play with that. But it sparked us into another space.
Those rotating sets, we've got to talk about those.
Yes.
You cited 2001: A Space Odyssey as one of your inspirations.
As we looked at what you could do with the library, we had all sorts of designs. Oh, you could have multi-level books and the things, and you could dance on a statue and do all this stuff. But because we were talking about gravity throughout our movie and what keeps you grounded, there was like, how do you break gravity at first? And whether it's Royal Wedding with Fred Astaire, with that nod, but also 2001, these beautiful giant sets actually turning, it felt like a great way to have anti-gravity established without anyone having magical powers.
Royal Wedding, we're going to get that on more Letterboxd watch lists. It only has 8,000 or so logs, but those numbers are going to go up after this. I promise you that.
I mean, he's done it the best, because when you see that, you can tell they've just rehearsed it so many times. He knows where his center of gravity is at all time.
I want to get this one on our watch list as well. On the Town with Gene Kelly. I think it's so underrated. And you said that was an inspiration for One Short Day.
Yeah, the song New York is like, it's a classic. When they come into New York, I think you can actually see a lot of nods to that number in our movie. When they look up at New York City for the first time and that camera sort of sweeps up on them. We do that with the girls, because I actually looked at the movie too to make sure, like, how do they get around to all these places without feeling choppy, or that you're understanding that the city they're going in, and what's the culture of Emerald City. So we had balloon makers, we had a bookshop, a place where they sell postcards for tourists, and all these things in there was just to embed them into what this world would be. The most exciting place you could see in Oz.
Singin' in the Rain.
Yep.
There's a Make 'em Laugh reference.
Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh. Don't you know everyone wants to laugh?
Even when you look at Popular in movie one, like, there is a make 'em laugh element when a performer has to, like, it's on their shoulders to do it all. Like, you don't have tricks to get around it, they gotta do it. And so in Wonderful, and of course you have Jeff Goldblum, who's an amazing talent. He can sing, he can dance, he can play instruments. We get to see the wizard's sort of playground behind the big head. And so he sort of charms his way back into Cynthia's life again. And there's a lot of nods to the choreography.
So those who have seen the Wicked stage musical or read the book, they know that the second half gets a little darker, a little more twisted. The films that you listed is Frankenstein, which kind of speaks to that tonal shift.
There's some great changes that happen in movie two. People literally, physically change. I think the power of Wicked was always the second act, was always the for good side of it. It allows everyone to make real choices after the consequences are so against them. And in this, you see literally a change in somebody when their outlook on the world, it totally shifts. And so we go there with it. We try to make it as dramatic and heart-stopping as possible, because it is real angst and real frustration when you grow up and you realize the world isn't what you want it to be, and you accept something different. You accept hate instead of love. And that's what, as the Tin Man loses his heart. I wanted to feel how hard it is to birth a new being that sees the world differently.
Also cited The Great Dictator, a Charlie Chaplin picture.
I mean, we do a very heavy nod to The Great Dictator. It is both charming and disturbing, all at the same time.
You've mentioned about how Wicked for Good is about morals, it's about sacrifice.
Yeah. In To Kill a Mockingbird, a person who has to have moral courage to stand up against a whole system. Movie two, we get to see not just Elphaba's struggle to stand up for what's right. Will she ever be able to stay there to stand, or is the decision better to leave? And I think that To Kill a Mockingbird has that inside of it. And even you never know what somebody's life is like until you live it. I think that's a part of that as well. Batman has a lot. I think it has two eras of Batman that influenced me just in my life. Elphaba in For Good there's an ambiguity to her because she doesn't want that responsibility, but she has to. Thematically, in the character of Batman, I see that.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I can do those things because I'm not a hero. Not like Dad.
So we started with a film that was in your 4 faves.
Yes.
Now we're gonna end with one that is occasionally in my 4 faves.
Yes.
Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
Similarly to Wicked for Good, it's about female friendship, it's about being misunderstood, it's about how there's no way out, essentially.
I remember watching Thelma Louise as a kid. I couldn't believe that ending happened. I remember being in the theater with my aunts and uncles, like, oh my gosh. It had such a profound effect on me as a human being out in the world, being like, do I feel happy? Do I feel sad? Ridley really broke the mold there.
Let's not get caught. What are you talking about? Let's keep going. What do you mean?
You know, when they're driving off that cliff, even there's moments where they grab each other's hands. Like, we definitely do a reference to that. I wanted to leave the audience in a way that felt like empowered by this decision, that they were going to do it their way.
And Thelma and Louise are literally defying gravity.
Literally. I mean, it ends on them like frozen in the sky.
Yes.
So.